Top 5 Human Remains You Can Visit Around the World. Egyptian Mummies. United Kingdom. The ancient Egyptians mummified their royalty, priests, and sometimes even pets so that their bodies and souls could travel safely into the afterlife. But the process was notoriously gory. The vital organs were removed from the body and stored in ceremonial jars, and the brain was pulled out from the nose in pieces. British interest in ancient Egyptian tombs, where the mummies were kept, rose during the Victorian era and became especially fashionable when Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. Due to the Carter-Carnarvon expedition and the treasure hunting activities of other wealthy Victorians, the British Museum in London holds the biggest collection of Egyptian antiquities outside of Egypt. This includes 2 rooms full of mummies, one of which is 5,000 years old, in the Roxy Walker Galleries. Another key mummy in the museum's collection is that of the high priestess of the Temple of Amen-Ra, which is said to be cursed. The story emerged after Thomas Douglas Murray purchased the mummy in 1889. Murray experienced a series of severe misfortunes, including losing his arm and witnessing the deaths of many friends and colleagues who had been in contact with the mummy. Even handlers working for the museum died after touching the mummy's case. Many also reported unsettling noises and moans coming from the mummy late at night. Other museums in the UK also have mummies in their collections. Manchester Museum in the Northwest has 20 human mummies collected by William Matthew Flinders Petrie, who also donated to the British Museum. Egyptian mummies can also be found in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, the Louvre Museum in Paris, the Egyptian Museum and Papyrus Collection in Berlin, the Museo Egizio in Turin, and the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Sokushinbutsu monks. Japan. Sokushinbutsu literally means self-mummification. It was performed by Buddhist monks between AD 1000 and 1800 in the hope that their preserved bodies would become a gateway between the mortal world and the spirit world. The monk would therefore achieve a higher state of enlightenment. The process gradually deprived the body of nutrients to reduce the amount of bacteria left over after death. The monk was buried alive under strict temperature restrictions with a continuous air supply so that he could continue breathing and die slowly, leaving his body behind almost completely intact. Unlike the Egyptian mummies, the Sokushinbutsu monks do not have coffins or tombs but are displayed in the open air. Often, their hair, nails, and clothes are preserved. They also remain sitting in the lotus position with their legs crossed, the pose they chose to die in. They do share a connection with the Egyptian mummies, however. If Sokushinbutsu was achieved, the monk's body would be worshipped as a god figure or living Buddha, just as the Egyptians believed that their mummies were bodily representations of the gods on earth. Although the act of Sokushinbutsu is not explicitly outlined in Buddhist teachings, the practice became popular among monks who wanted to be worshipped after death. In 1877, the Japanese government outlawed Sokushinbutsu after it was deemed to be a form of ritualistic suicide, which was already illegal. The last known attempt at Sokushinbutsu was performed by Tetsuri Uke, a one-eyed monk whose followers adjusted his death records after Sokushinbutsu was confirmed. That way, the date of death would appear before the practice became illegal. Not all attempts at Sokushinbutsu worked, but the successful ones are on display in a number of temples across Japan. Tetsuri Ukai is available to visit at Nangaku Temple in central Tsuruoka in northern Japan. Others are on display at the Dainichibu Temple on Mount Utano in Dewa Province and the Kaikakuji Temple in Sakata in Yamagata Prefecture. Many monks may also still be buried throughout Yamagata Prefecture. Their bodies would have been abandoned after Sokushinbutsu was made illegal. The Settle Akasuari. Czech Republic. The Settle Akasuari is a church with a difference. All the decorations inside are made of human bone. The church also features at least one of every bone in the human body within a single chandelier, and the entire chapel displays the skeletons of 40,000 to 70,000 people. The original church was built in 1400, with the bone decorations added in 1870 by woodcarver Francis Krint. Initially, the church was much like any other in the region until King Otakar II of Bohemia sent a member of the Settle Cistercian monastery to the Holy Land on pilgrimage. While there, he collected a jar of soil, brought it back to the church, and sprinkled it across the cemetery. Settle suddenly became the place to be buried for anyone who wanted their remains to be close to holy soil and therefore to God. With so many people leaving bodies to be buried or reburied in the church, the cemetery became overrun. Bones started to be stored in the cellar or ossuary, bone store. Rint was then brought in to help fix the problem. Rint was employed to organize the bones kept in the chapel basement but was given no further explicit instructions. The bone decorations he created, including a coat of arms for the Schwarzenberg family, have attracted tourists and filmmakers ever since. Now nicknamed the Bone Church, Settle Ossuary is one of the oldest sites where you can see human remains arranged artistically and with great skill. You can also see the bodies of over 40,000 people in a space that wouldn't be able to hold them all if they were living. The current administration for the ossuary calls the atmosphere peaceful and believes the church respects and celebrates the wishes of its dead by allowing their bones to rest near holy soil, Welten, aka Body Worlds. Germany. The Body Worlds exhibition is equal parts art, science, and shock factor. This large selection of real human bodies, stripped of their skins and posed in interesting positions like running or performing yoga, shows how the muscles of the body work. The exhibit has toured all over the world and continues to do so. But the permanent exhibition and laboratory where the bodies are preserved is in Gibbon in the state of Brandenburg, Germany. The exhibit was created by Gunther von Hagens following his invention of and experiments with plastination. Using this process, the water and lipids are extracted from human tissue, organs, and body parts and replaced with plastic. This means that the body part or organ becomes solid so that doctors and medical students can hold and examine it directly. After giving university lectures on the application of plastination in medical studies, von Hagens started performing plastination commercially, creating a touring exhibition that the public could pay to see. The Body Worlds exhibit has faced considerably controversy over its 20-year lifespan. Religious leaders, politicians, and members of the general public argued that von Hagens was not showing enough respect to the dead and that the exhibition was immoral. In response, von Hagens said that all bodies plastinated for the exhibition were donated voluntarily via a program that made it clear how the bodies would be used. There are still over 15,000 people who have agreed to donate their bodies to future exhibits when they die. According to von Hagens, it costs approximately €70,000, over $75,000, to plastinate an entire body. A head comes in at €15,000, just over $16,000, and other organs are around €2,500, almost $2,700, each, depending on the size and condition. Despite such large overhead, entrance to the exhibit is reasonably priced at €12, just under $13, per adult. This means that the future of the Body Worlds exhibit is uncertain because it costs more money than it makes overall. Les Catacombs. France. Les Catacombs is a key tourist spot in Paris. It exhibits the bodies and skeletons of people who were formerly buried in the Cemetery of the Innocents near Saint-Eustache in central Paris. People were buried in the cemetery for 1,000 years before it became a health hazard and the bodies had to be relocated. 6 million bodies were moved to Les Catacombs between 1786 and 1860. They are now on display within the 320 kilometers, 200 miles, of tunnels and chambers beneath the city, although some of these areas are off-limits to the public. There are rumors of secret tunnels and entrances into these restricted areas, which have been used illegally by Parisians known as cataphiles. However, these secret places are not advertised to tourists and it is not socially acceptable to look for them. Due to the creepy atmosphere and darkness of Les Catacombs, it has been subject to a number of conspiracy theories over the years. These include stories that fresh bodies were found within the restricted chambers, that the gates of hell are located in the tunnels, and that a recently discovered video shows a man exploring lake catacombs before being chased away by an unknown ghostly presence. None of these stories has been properly verified, and many believe them to be hoaxes. But the stories certainly add to the mystery of lake catacombs, particularly in relation to the restricted areas that only a few lawbreakers get to explore. Talund Man, Denmark. The Talund Man is one of the best preserved bog bodies in the world. Discovered in 1950, the remains were mistaken for those of a recent murder victim because the body had been so well preserved. The body was discovered with a rope around its neck, indicating that the man had been killed by hanging. Traces of a final meal of porridge or oats were still in the small intestines. By examining the Talund Man's teeth and skeleton, scientists estimated that he was about 30 years old when he died around 350 BC. When discovered, the remains included the man's hair and belt. It is assumed that his other clothing rotted away from the acid in the bog water where he was found. The body was also wearing a pointed sheepskin hat that was tied around the head. Although the entire body measured 162 centimeters, 5 feet 4 inches, long, it is believed that he would have shrunk during his time in the bog. In fact, some of his bones had begun to pierce through the skin in ways that demonstrate the skin getting smaller and therefore putting pressure on the ribs, hips, and shoulders. Talund Man's internal organs, including his brain, stomach, small intestines, lungs, and heart, were all incredibly well preserved and were eventually removed for further examination by medical staff at the Bispebjerg Hospital in Copenhagen. A particularly well-preserved finger was cut off and later examined by forensic officers in 1976, making it one of the oldest collected fingerprints in the world. At the time, scientists looking to preserve the Talund Man were mainly concerned with his head. As a result, his head was removed and preserved through a complex process which slowly replaced the bog water inside the body with beeswax and paraffin. This protected the head and facial features of the Talund Man, although the head itself has shrunk slightly since being excavated. The body was allowed to dry out, leaving behind bones rather than flesh. But the skin has since been recreated and is displayed, along with the original head, in the Silkeborg Museum in Denmark.